Hi, welcome back to part two of building a new to data vault team. I'm Cindi Meyersohn.
And I'm Dan Linstedt.
So, as we ended up our last podcast, we wanted to pick up on the roles that should attend training. We were touching on training, touching on coaching, just to encourage the business to understand that there's more to getting the team to start to operate in a more efficient way than just deciding to implement a data vault 2 or deciding to take a different agile method approach. You want to help your team succeed and you want your business engaged. If you're truly going to be agile, you must embed collaboration into everything that you're doing. And that means that the team also needs your collaboration in supporting them in these new efforts. So we talk about roles and responsibilities, especially in disciplined agile. There are some very specific roles and responsibilities that occur. And one of those roles does embed the business definitely into the process of developing your data vault solution. So, Dan, I would love for you to talk a little bit about why, for example, one of the things we encourage businesses to do is to get their directors and their managers even involved with training or attending part of training.
Yeah, thanks. Our training is unique. At least I feel it is. And part of that is I'm aware of much of the training in the analyst community and the analytics communities, and having gone to much of the training myself. What we try to do with a practitioner training, and this is specifically the CDVP2 training that we mentioned before, Certified Data Vault 2.0 practitioner level, is on the first day, and this is the first day of the instructor-led type of idea. We start out with language, the where, the why, and the what of Data Vault. So what is it? Why is it important? Why should you pay attention to it? And where does it fit within your organization? And so we really talk about some of the business issues and the struggles that they've had with past implementations and past organizations and things like that. It's a roundabout thing. And what we notice is we like to get some of the C levels in and some of the directors levels in for the first hour or two, or as long as they're welcome to stay as long as they want, obviously. But in the first hour or two, in the first part of the morning of instructor led, we really focus on the business side of things, and an understanding of why we're trying to do what we're trying to do really helps these high level folks talk to their teams, understand why their teams are asking for certain things down the road, and so on. So it gives a level of confidence, not just to the team to see the executives there. Hey, look, they support us in this. This is great. But to give the executives an idea and the directors an idea of what it is we're asking these teams to do going forward. So directors and managers and even business analysts should really attend the first day. And as we go on through the first day, we get into some additional concepts that talk about the business analysis side of the house, that talk about the Scrum and the Agile, and Discipline Agile. And of course, we're diving deeper as we go into the course. So attending training, it can vary from day to day and hour to hour, but we do recommend that directors, managers, and some even C levels at the first part of it, and then the business analysts and some data scientists. Now, when we start getting into that level, we get into business analysts, the data scientists, the Scrum leads, and that kind of thing. This is the next level of training that we offer in this course as well. That's about the second half of day one onwards that we recommend these folks attend. And what we do is we start out with a conceptual. So we're always talking about, where does Data Vault meet business? What problems in business does it solve? And the deeper we dive, we get into some of these conceptual issues, like what is a business key? And how does it impact the business? And really focus on things like the business workflow and the workflow process. What track through the business does the data take? And, I have to come back to the statements that the data mesh principles make around particular small cohesive teams. When you talk about a data mesh team, you start talking about, well, I need interdisciplinary. I need a business analyst on the team. I need a data architect on the team, on the same team. I need a data movement or an ETL specialist or a data integrator on the team. And this is true. And including data scientists. You want a mixed team, a mixed set of specialists on a small cohesive team so that they can move things forward. And this is where the training really takes hold. So just because we teach these folks on a team, we teach all of these folks the same principles, doesn't mean that it's going to be their core competency. What it really means at a practitioner level is they can begin to speak the same language, and they understand the standards, and they understand the process, and they understand why we have an implementation guideline that says do this way. And what you'll notice is coming out of that training experience that these folks on these teams, if a data architect, for example, goes through this training, the data architect understands why the data integrator is saying, well, I have to do this first, and I have to do that next, and we have to work this way. And it helps with the cohesiveness of the team. It helps with the best practice. It's a level of understanding is what I'm getting at. So these are really kinds of things that we cover in the training. And obviously, as we go into the second half of the first day, we intentionally say, look, to the C-levels, you can stay if you like, but it probably won't be necessary for you to be here. If they have a highly technical background and they're interested, then certainly they can stick around. But it doesn't mean they're going to leave the course and go build one, right? Unless they really want to. They will receive that level of training, but it doesn't mean that that's the case. What it means for the person that sticks around is that they have a better understanding and they can communicate with their directors and their leads and their scrum masters better. And they can escalate better, and they can help resolve problems better, and they can establish better governance practices and support the team better. So this is what it means. And this is why we recommend at first the directors and C-levels and managers attend, even business analysts attend the first half of the first day, and then follow on from that. The general practitioner training for the whole course, we recommend scrum masters, sprint managers, data integration specialists, architects, designers, business analysts, and even data scientists to attend the full set of training. So this is sort of how we set up the training, and these are the roles that we recommend be engaged in the training processes. Cindi, do you have any additional thoughts on the roles of training, or did I miss one?
The only thing I would add is, as we move into training and we get further into the actual CDVP2 curriculum, it is highly technical. And so we begin to move into, we talk to our data pipeline developers, we talk to our DBAs, we're talking, as you said, to the architects, but also even the folks that are responsible for planning real-time solutions and embedding that as well. We're talking about the guys that are responsible potentially for laying out your cloud-based storage areas and things like that. It's important for everyone to understand how all the pieces fit together. So it is highly technical. So, and that's what you want. You want the business to meet the technical aspects so you understand both optics of what putting and installing an analytic solution really truly means.
Yeah, thanks. I also thought while you were talking about another thing that Sanjay and I were talking about in some of the podcasts recently, we brought up, and that was the operational data vault concept. We're getting to the point where operational systems are starting to converge with the analytic systems. And you see that with the latest release of Snowflake, as we've talked about before, the hybrid technology that they're coming out with. And I think going forward, it may be important to include operational data specialists or operational application architects in the data vault principles, especially if you're going to build a piece or a sliver of operational data vault within the operational system. So this is sort of where the training is going, but yeah, absolutely important.
Yeah, so if I can just add something on that, I recently was on a call with a gentleman. We were talking about potential kickstart and some things, and he was explaining what his business did. And they're starting to develop some capability. And I mentioned to him, I said, you're at this inception level of what you're building, and you're also looking for analytics. You may want to consider going to Data Vault training and applying the concepts of Data Vault to some of these completely new operational systems that you're looking to develop, because you want to talk about real-time analytics. If your operational system, is actually a Data Vault, think about the, massive acceleration you can get if you simply put your analytics on top of your operational data. And I told him, this has been done in Data Vault in the past and highly successfully. And I think that it's kind of interesting that, at least in two of those particular operational systems, the end product was so good that both companies ended up being bought out by larger companies. So, clearly the solution works and works extremely well, enough to impress, larger companies and attract other investors. So it was just kind of funny to have that conversation, because that was definitely not where that conversation was going when we first started. So anyway.
Stay tuned for more information about operational Data Vault as we go forward. We're going to continue releasing bits and pieces about it. It is an exciting area to see go. As Cindi mentioned, we built several of them over the course of the last 20 years, I want to say, and they've been highly successful. So it isn't like you're journeying into brand new territory and nobody's done it before. That's completely false. People have done it and they've been hugely successful. But if you do have the opportunity, whether it's a pleasure or displeasure is up to you. That's your opinion. But if you do have the opportunity to rebuild either some or all of your operational system, we do highly encourage you to take a look at or talk to us about operational Data Vault. It's an interesting field. Okay, that said, our next part of this, building a new team, we can't talk about building a new team or building a team for Data Vault without talking about tool vendors and consultants and how to engage and when to engage these tool vendors and consultants. And again, beyond coaching and beyond training, which are, I would say, required, how do you get other consultants or consultancies engaged, and how do you get other tool vendors engaged, and when? So Cindi, you've got some ideas on this about fitting your business process, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I have pretty strong opinions on this, quite frankly. So as you know, we've talked about this in the first podcast on this particular subject last week, was that you want to make sure that your team understands their own business process. And I come from an application development background, and I cannot tell you how many times I have watched the business select a tool because they think that it's got great capability, but they don't look at it from the perspective of, does it actually work with our business process, or are we going to end up changing our current business process to match the tool? Sometimes if you're in the mode of disruptive practices to sort of catapult your business in a different direction, maybe that's the right decision. But generally, that's a very difficult uphill battle. So I truly believe that when the team goes through the process of understanding their own general business processes, understanding how they're going to work with the business in a collaborative fashion, and then they start to have, I would say, vendors begin to demo the capabilities of their products, that is, to me, a better approach, because you're actually looking at tooling that not only tracks with your process decisions and the way that you work, but also tooling that hopefully will capture where you are in whatever your business process is, so that your team doesn't have to scramble to figure out where they were in order to pick up with the tool again. Your tool should be flexible, and it should be tracking right along with your business process. That is my strong opinion.
I completely understand that. I've been in situations, well, just to give you an example, not to belabor the point or name drop Lockheed Martin again, but I have to tell you this, and all the listeners too. At Lockheed, people found out I worked at Lockheed, and one of the very first questions out of their mouths was, "Do you know so and so?" And of course, in an organization of 159,000 people, the answer most of the time was no, right? But the second question was, "Do you have tool X or Y?" Especially if they worked for a vendor. And the answer to that question, 99% of the time, was, "Yeah. If there's a tool out there, we probably have it," as Lockheed as a corporation. Now, the right question was, do we use it? And again, I got to say, 99% of the time, the answer was no. Most of these tools that Lockheed acquired were bought because of shiny object syndrome. Look, this tool came in, did a demo. It's very cool. Let's get approval. They got approval. They rushed the tool in, and then it sat on the shelf because only one person was interested. They did what they had to do with the tool and then left it behind because they moved jobs, got transferred, left the company, you name it. And they didn't document best practices. They didn't have documentation around the problem they were trying to solve or what the problems were that the tool addressed. And so you see this over and over and over again. The bigger the company, the more likely the tool's already there. It's just not up to date on maintenance or up to date on the version, or, sometimes in Lockheed, we got asked if we had a tool, and then the software manufacturer was gone. They're defunct. They've left the building. They're closed their doors. There is no way to get an update. And the tool was 15 years old. And it's just one of those funny analogies. But I do want to say something a little bit different. Right. You definitely don't want to say, let's find a tool waiting to fit the problem. Wherever the problem comes, we have a tool to solve it. That's the wrong approach. And I agree with you vehemently on that. You want to find the business problem, document the business processes, and then document why the tool is a good fit for it. You want to justify the tool's existence. And then, of course, you want to follow that up immediately with training. This was something else that happened at Lockheed. Was they would buy a tool, one person would go, "Okay, I'm going to build something." They did, they built the prototype, and then it all worked and great, and everybody clapped their hands and went back to work. Then the person was left going, "Well, why did we buy this? Because now I don't have authorization to maintain, to maintain updates, to pay for updates." And the next year they would put it through for update approvals and get denied. Why? Because they were the only one using it. And so what happened was everybody loved the tool, loved the product, loved it, solved the problem. But because the original person who submitted the request didn't submit for training for people around them, the tool got left in the dust. And so this is one of the other issues. You definitely, when you purchase a tool, you want to not only find a business problem that it solves, but you also want to purchase the training along with it and make sure that more than one person, two is good, better than one, but I would argue that an entire team be trained on the tool. Even if it doesn't always fit their solution, if you've got a team working to solve a business problem, then the team should know about the tool and its capabilities. That's my argument. That fits within what we've been talking about, the data mesh teaming concept, as well as the discipline agile approaches. And with the team having significant knowledge about what the tool's capabilities are or how they could leverage it, that's where the acceleration really hits. So if you think about it this way, here's another analogy. I love analogies. Those of you that are listening probably know this by now. But one of the analogies that I like to discuss at this point is called the hand and glove analogy. I think almost everyone knows what winter is or what snow is. And you probably know that snow only happens in cold weather, right? And if you have extended cold, like we live in an area of the world here, northern New England, let's just call it that, in the United States, and we get 6 to 8 months of winter, and sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. We get negative temperatures, whether it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, it doesn't matter. And at a certain point in the year, if you go outside without the proper clothing, you will get frostbite in a matter of minutes. And that is probably not something that anyone wants, right? I know I don't want it. And so I know if I don't want frostbite on my fingers, I want gloves. I want the proper gloves that are certified down to the certain level of temperature that's out there. I don't want flimsy driving gloves that are a very thin layer of leather, unless my objective, my business problem is to get in my car and turn the heater on and drive somewhere. If that's the objective, I'm only outside for a few seconds, and then I'm in a slightly warmer environment that isn't negative temperatures. It's still cold in the car and it takes time to warm up. Then I want driving gloves, right? But if I'm going out to shovel snow, you bet driving gloves aren't going to be enough. And then there's wool gloves, like the just wool, thin knit wool gloves. And there's different kinds of wool gloves, right? So if I get a thin knit wool glove that exposes the skin underneath or lets the air breathe, I probably, I can postpone frostbite for a little bit longer, but still not the proper glove. If the wool glove gets wet, you all know how soggy wool gloves can be. Frostbite will come even faster, especially with ice on your fingers and so on. So wool gloves probably aren't the right tool for the job. So what I want is something bigger. If I get a thicker wool glove with a leather pad and maybe an insulation, a thinsulate inside, then I'm better off. But even if it gets wet, I can stay out a little bit longer and not get frostbite. Now, if I'm only going to be out shoveling the walkway as opposed to the walkway and the driveway, then maybe a thick wool glove with a leather pad is enough. Now, if I'm going to be out in the snow for, let's say an hour or two, or I'm going on a skidoo, right? One of those, what do they call them? Mechanical sleds. But if I'm going out there on a skidoo to go snowmobiling, that's what I was looking for. If I go snowmobiling, I want a different kind of glove. One that is probably more weatherproof, in fact. So if the snow hits it, if the ice hits it, it bounces off, and a thick insulation. So this is sort of where you need gloves. You need gloves to keep your hands warm. Now, once you know what the business problem is, all of this analogy leads down to what is the business problem you're trying to solve, which is what you just talked about. And I know I'm going to be out snowmobiling this winter in negative temperatures. So I'm going to go during warmer weather and find a glove that meets that need, right? And I'm going to try on different gloves, and I'm not going to wait to the last minute and look up and go, oh my gosh, I don't have the right gloves for snowmobiling, right? So if you know this is coming and you've defined the business process, then how quickly can you get to the solution? Now, gloves are a simple analogy. Almost everyone knows how to use a glove. You hand them a glove and say, this is for your hand, and they'll figure out right hand, left hand, because the thumb is the shortest digit on most hands. So you can figure out pretty quickly just by visual acuity, hey, this is a glove. It's meant to go on my hand. I wouldn't put a hand glove on my foot, right? I wouldn't use a screwdriver for a task I need a torque wrench for. That's, part of the analogy. So not all tools are the right solution. You don't want to force fit them into the wrong place. But if I know this is the case, I'm going to go out and do this ahead of time. And if it gets a little, to get a little deeper into this analogy, if I know I'm going to go snowmobiling, but I've never been on a snowmobile, I might want a little bit of training before I get on a snowmobile. Now, I've ridden motorcycles. They're similar. They have an accelerator and a brake and this and that and the other. But even when the first time I got on a snowmobile, I needed 10 to 15 minutes of training. And then I needed 30 minutes of try it in a circle in a controlled environment before you get out in the powder, in the backwoods. Because if you tip the snowmobile, if you end up in a snowbank and you can't get it out, you kind of need help. You always have to be with someone else, and you need a tow, and you need a guide, and so on, because it's easy to get lost in the backwoods. It really is. So this is some of the points, and this is where we get into the analogy of a kickstart, which we keep talking about. The kickstart says, okay, you know what the business problem is. We've addressed it in contractual manner. You've got a coach, i.e. the authorized trainer, in there. You're going to get training. We're going to teach you how to snowmobile. We're going to teach you the right proper clothing. We're going to lend you some overalls if you don't have any, right? We're going to insulate you from the cold. We'll take you out on a half an hour journey first and give you the experience. We'll drive you around in circles in a protected environment, help you build. So this is sort of where a kickstart comes in. But this is important. And so the mechanics of the execution, they can and should be accelerated by leveraging a tool. In other words, if I'm on a snowmobile can accelerate my time to go from point A to point B. That's the mechanics of the execution. Whereas if I were going to use snowshoes, it's going to take me longer. But I need less training to use a pair of snowshoes than I do to get on a snowmobile. Now, if I've got somebody on the back of the snowmobile, that's a different set of training entirely. First, you got to learn to drive it and drive it alone and drive it through big snow drifts and big snow and emergency situations. And then if you're going to have a passenger, you have extra safety precautions like weight distribution, knowing how to turn a corner and how fast you can go. Because if it's just you, you know what you're going to do before you do it. So you're automatically leaning if you're turning a corner fast. But if someone's on the back with you and they're holding onto your waist, they're not necessarily going to know you're approaching a corner. They might see it, but they don't, unless they're trained to, they might not exactly lean the same way, or they might not lean soon enough, or you might not slow down as the driver enough. And then you'll tip the snowmobile or go off the track. So these are important things. And this is sort of where all the training and engagement come in. But when we do the kickstart, to summarize this up and then move on to the next topic here, when we do the kickstart, we do engage the tool vendors as part of the kickstart process. And we work with one tool vendor at a time, or maybe two at the most. So a BI vendor and an automation vendor, an acceleration vendor. And we bring them in, and we bring in one of their experts to actually run the tool during the kickstart. So they're the ones driving the snowmobile. We are the passengers, even though we are the authorized trainers. And then we engage in that activity, and they help guide the process. They help drive us around the right place. They help keep us from getting lost in the tool and the features, all of the features that are there, and getting, distracted by shiny whistles and bell objects that we don't need during the kickstart process. So this is kind of important. And I think that really describes the whole process as to when to engage tool vendors and consultants. Of course, if you're going to engage a tool vendor, not only should you define the business problem first, which we both agree, but I strongly am still in favor of some form of tool bake-off, tool competition. You should have a list of requirements, and you should get the vendors to demonstrate the capabilities against those requirements lists, and come back to you and say, well, we meet it this way, and have them prove it. And that's sort of where that goes. Cindi, any final thoughts on engaging tool vendors or consultants in this process?
Yeah, I think that one thing I would just add to that very quickly is that it's not just whether the tool is capable of producing, the whatever feature set that you're looking for. It's how easily is it intuitive to do so again? Because if it's not, then it can become a cumbersome process potentially for the team to go through to actually, number one, stick to their own business process, and number two, get that capability out of the tool. So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I guess if I were to use an analogy with a snowmobile, again, just to finish that up, think of it this way. If you know what a bulldozer is, there are different tools and different controls to run a bulldozer than there are to run a snowmobile. The last thing you would want are bulldozer controls on a snowmobile. I don't think that would be as effective as having handlebars and an accelerator on where they are on a snowmobile. So even a steering wheel from a car perspective, an automobile perspective, is probably less effective than having a handlebar, which you get from the motorcycle and bicycle world on a snowmobile. So I'm in total agreement there. All right. So we're going to move on to the last topic for this podcast here. Again, we're discussing building a team for the Data Vault, and we're going to ask the question now, what other resources are there for supporting roles, and what other kinds of roles might you need? Cindi, do you want to start us off on this?
It's always good to have something else to fall back on. I feel like to have something to support, your, if you will, your rationale for, pulling in a coach, for example, and then, what happens, when the coach is, if you're weaned off the coach, which you want to do, right? If a coach is actually coaching and not stepping into other roles there. We do have other resources available to the business that are not necessarily consulting roles, but certainly things that they can tap into us on. One of the things I've always offered to students, Dan, is just this offer that you make frequently to, provide like some executive management overview or presentations or support for teams that are trying to get the data vault message out there to their businesses, and for architects that are looking for additional support in that area. So just a brief, like a 1-hour coaching session or 1-hour consulting presentation to business where you can speak at the business level has always been extremely effective for teams to or for architects to engage with you with DVA to provide that type of thing. I know that you have other, say, tricks up your sleeve, but certainly you have other offerings that are supporting various roles inside the business as they move forward and inside the IT team. So I'll let you speak to those, but
Yeah, thanks. So what we're calling those on the website, if you take a look at the Data Vault Alliance website, we are beginning to advertise what we call advisory services. And we've had them quite some time, and we've made them available, as you said, to folks that engage in training or engage in Kickstarts. But now we're making that available to anyone that's interested. Basically, what we're talking about, we start off with the executive management overview, and we customize those. So whatever you think your executives need, let's say you've got one executive who's in favor of the data vault and likes what they see and has supported it throughout and wants their peers to understand what's going on. We'll come in and work with that executive to design what they really want to present, the message that they want to have heard. And we'll do it in such a way that it's in support of them as well as the data vault efforts and so on. And we'll do our best to explain how data vault works at that level. So that's the executive management overview. And we've done that for directors as well. So directors across the organization who may not be involved in the data vault efforts at the beginning, maybe they sit on the operational side or a different side of the business, but they're interested to know, how are you going to build your analytics in your division, right? So these are some of the things that we can do. We have additional coaching and analyst services around business analytics. We talk to the BAs, we talk about scoping for the user stories. We talk about how the BAs should interact with the data vault teams, and the communication mechanisms. In the business analytics coaching, we also talk about this specific role called a technical business analyst. And usually these folks have a technical background. They understand SQL. They know what data sets are. They know how to create table statements. They would love a sandbox in development. But oftentimes they're disconnected from IT. They're disconnected from the build process. So we can discuss the technical business analytics in a coaching sense, and we can bring them into the fold. We can talk about the roles with business and engage them with the IT build processes so that they're empowered to look at their data. They're really part of the self-service analytics crowd, if you will, that we encourage. And then we have additional coaching around QA, QC, and governance practices, and we talked about that in the last part one of this podcast extensively, so I'm not going to revisit that one. But we can help both the business at the business level establish the QA, QC, and governance practices if they don't have any, especially around analytics and data warehousing and BI, or we can help an existing QA, QC, and governance teams understand how data vault fits into this landscape. And then to follow that on, we have advanced coaching and advisory services around data science and how data vault works with that, data mesh and how the teams and the teaming and the agile principles work together with the data mesh concepts. Real time from a technical perspective, how real time and operational data warehousing and operational data vaults work with the operational systems, and the best practices around machine generated data and so on, data lakes, and of course, unstructured data. So if you're dealing with images or audio or video or all three of those or documents, we can help you figure out how to engage those components with your analytics efforts. As we all know, quote unquote, unstructured or semi-structured data makes up 80% of the data in our world today. So these are important things that should not be left behind in your analytics solution. I remember working with a large bank in Australia about 12 years ago now, where we were incorporating their risk documents. So they had a number of Word documents and they wanted to glean information from a risk assessment process automatically. And it was in the risk department. And basically the documents were their operational system, or one of them, if you will. And so they wanted to incorporate some of the things from their documents into the analytics perspective. And so they weren't sure how that all fit together. And we worked it out in the course of about 6 months. And then finally, we offer a specialized set of coaching on security and access, including PII, private information, GDPR regulations, and how that works, and how you integrate with HR and LDAP principles and the data management system that you've chosen to use. So those are some of the things that we do. And of course, in the government sector, we're going to ask you, how deep down the security rabbit hole do you really want to go? But we can get into things like RBAC or role-based access controls and cell level security and LDAP and all of those kinds of things. But it's very important to understand. So we have all of these things available. We just haven't done a good job of advertising them yet, but that's coming. So any closing thoughts, Cindi, before we finish up this part 2 of this podcast?
Yeah, I think I would add that we also are looking at, with regard to certified resources. One of the things that DVA does offer is a vendor certification tool program, which many of the automation vendors have enrolled in. And it is basically a way to put all vendors on the same playing field with regard to Data Vault 2 compliant. This is just one, it's actually it's support for the business, because there are some great tools out there, and the business also often wants to know, well, is this tool compliant? And we want to be able to provide that level of assurance that the tool is capable of producing a Data Vault 2 standards compliant solution for them. So that is something that we're looking at. And there's some other things that are coming down the pipe that I won't mention right now, but more to come on some other services that we're looking to provide to the business to ensure that your implementations have been developed for you in a compliant manner. Because you're expecting, I would presume that everyone that's putting a Data Vault in is expecting the set of benefits that you would achieve through a Data Vault implementation. If you're not getting those benefits, you need to understand why. And so Dan talked about this a bit with regard to assessment services, but we're looking at a couple of other things that we will be offering in the not too distant future to businesses to help you be certain that you are getting what you've been, promised, and what you probably paid a lot for with regard to implementation support and assistance.
Excellent. Thank you, Cindi. And thank you to all the listeners out there that hung in there with us on these part 1 and part 2 podcasts of Building a New Team. We will see you in the next podcast.
Bye, everyone.